Snow blanketed the quiet town of West Valley City, Utah, on December 7, 2009. It was a typical cold winter morning. Kids bundled in jackets trudged off to school. Parents sipped coffee, scraping frost off windshields. But behind one door, a mother of two had vanished into the icy silence. Her name was Susan Powell, a bright, loving, and fiercely devoted mother. That morning, she didn't show up to work. Her sons didn't make it to daycare. Her phone rang unanswered. Friends panicked. Something was wrong. What unfolded next would become one of the most haunting cases in recent American history. A story of secrets, manipulation, obsession, and ultimate destruction. This is the case of Susan Powell. Susan Powell, 28, was living what many thought was a normal life with her husband, Josh Powell, and their two young sons, Charlie and Braden. From the outside, they looked like the picture-perfect Mormon family, active in their church, raising children in a modest Utah home. But behind closed doors, cracks were spreading. On that fateful Monday morning, Susan's co-workers at Wells Fargo grew worried when she didn't arrive. Her close friend and co-worker, Giovanna Owings, knew something was wrong. Susan was never late. She was responsible, especially when it came to her children. The police were called. They arrived at the Powell home to find it locked, blinds drawn, and no sign of the family. But something caught their eye. Two box fans pointed at a wet spot on the carpet. It was strange, unsettling. When Josh finally returned home with the boys later that day, the police confronted him immediately. "Where have you been?" they asked. Josh's answer: "I took the boys camping, in the desert, at 12:30 a.m., in the middle of a snowstorm." Police immediately found his story hard to believe. Who takes toddlers out camping in freezing temperatures at midnight? Susan's family knew something was terribly wrong. They'd seen the cracks in the marriage. Josh was controlling, jealous, and increasingly unstable. Susan had even started keeping a secret journal, and what she wrote would later haunt investigators. In one entry, she wrote, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." Josh told police he had no idea where Susan was. He said she must have run off. But nothing in Susan's life suggested she'd abandon her boys. She was deeply attached to them. She had food storage, a stable job, and had even deposited money in a secret bank account the day before she vanished. When police searched the house, they found Susan's purse, ID, and keys. Her car was still in the garage. Her phone was later discovered in the family minivan. All signs pointed to one thing: Susan had never left that house alive. As media pressure mounted, Josh's behavior grew erratic. He refused to sit down for a proper police interview. He rented a car and drove over 800 miles in a single day, refusing to say where he went. He cleaned the family minivan thoroughly. He deleted files from his computer. But worst of all, he never once joined the search for Susan. Susan's family, especially her father, Chuck Cox, pleaded with the public for help. They handed out flyers, held vigils, appeared on news stations. But Josh stayed silent, growing more isolated and paranoid by the day. Then, a bombshell dropped. Police discovered Josh had taken out a $1.5 million life insurance policy on Susan. Still, there wasn't enough to charge him. No body, no murder weapon, no confession, just a missing woman, a suspicious husband, and growing fear. But the deeper police dug, the darker the story became, because it wasn't just Josh they had to worry about. It was his father too, a man named Stephen Powell. And what police found in Stephen's home would send shivers down every spine in America. By 2010, the investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance had stalled. There were no arrests, no charges, just Josh, stone-faced and defensive, clutching to the lie that Susan left willingly. But behind the scenes, detectives were following a trail, a deeply uncomfortable one. It led them not only into Josh's troubled mind, but into his father's home. And what they uncovered there would expose a level of obsession and depravity that stunned even the most seasoned investigators. Josh Powell wasn't just secretive. He was raised in secrecy. His father, Stephen Powell, lived in Puyallup, Washington, and was a deeply troubled man. A failed musician, a self-proclaimed free thinker. And worst of all, a man obsessed with his daughter-in-law, Susan. When police served a search warrant on Stephen's home in 2011, they weren't expecting what they found. Inside were thousands of photos and videos of Susan, taken without her knowledge. Close-ups of her legs, her feet, her body, sometimes through windows, sometimes under doors. There were audio diaries, dozens of cassette tapes, where Stephen spoke in graphic detail about his obsession with her. In one tape, he said, "Susan is the love of my life. I know she feels it too." But Susan didn't feel it. In fact, she had confided in friends and family that Stephen made her incredibly uncomfortable. Once, he even tried to kiss her. Susan recoiled and told Josh, but instead of confronting his father, Josh sided with him. This, police believed, was the start of Susan feeling completely alone. Following the raid, Stephen Powell was arrested for voyeurism and child pornography. The evidence was overwhelming, but while Stephen was being hauled away, police turned their attention back to Josh. After everything, he was still raising Susan's children. The state of Utah decided enough was enough. They removed Charlie and Braden from Josh's custody and placed them with Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox. This was a turning point. For the first time, Josh was under intense pressure. If he wanted his sons back, he'd have to comply with court-ordered evaluations, therapy, and supervised visits. But Josh had no intention of letting go quietly. Under the care of Susan's parents, Charlie and Braden, now a bit older, began to talk. In separate interviews, they started revealing bits and pieces of the night Susan disappeared. Charlie once said, "Mommy went with us, but she didn't come back." Another time, he mentioned his mother was in the trunk, and later added that she had been hurt. These chilling fragments weren't solid evidence, but they painted a picture police couldn't ignore. The theory was now clear. Susan had never left that house alive. Josh had killed her, possibly with help from his father, and hid her body somewhere in the Utah desert, where he bizarrely took the kids camping at 1 a.m. But without a body, charges remained elusive. Still, police and child services continued pressuring Josh. He was losing control. The walls were closing in, and soon, he would make a final, horrific decision. On February 5th, 2012, Josh Powell scheduled a supervised visit with his sons at a rental home in Graham, Washington. A social worker escorted Charlie and Braden to the front door. Josh opened it, smiled at the boys, and shut the door in her face. She pounded on the door. Then, a sudden explosion. The house burst into flames. Inside were Josh O and his 2 innocent sons. It was a murder-suicide. And the most chilling part, it was planned.